About 100 miles off the coast of Thailand, 36 Cambodian boys and men worked barefoot all day and into the night on the deck of a purseiner fishing ship. 15-foot swells climbed the sides of the ship, clipping the crew below the knees. Ocean spray and fish innards made the floor skating rink slippery. Seesawing erratically from the rough seas and gale winds, the deck was an obstacle course of jagged tackle, spinning winches, and tall stacks of 500-pound nets. Rain or shine, shifts can run 18 to 20 hours. At night, the crew cast their nets when the small silverfish they target, mostly jack mackerel and herring, were more reflective and easier to spot in darker waters. During the day, when the sun was high, temperatures topped 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but they worked nonstop. Drinking water was tightly rationed. Most countertops were crawling with roaches. The toilet was a removable wooden floorboard on the deck. At night, vermin cleaned the boys' unwashed plates. The ship's mangy dog barely lifted her head when rats, which roamed on the board like carefree city squirrels, ate from her bowl. If they were not fishing, the crew sorted their catch and fixed their nets, which were prone to ripping. One boy, his shirt smudged with fish guts, proudly showed off his 2 missing fingers, severed by a net that had coiled around a spinning crank. Their hands, which virtually never dried, had open wounds slit from fish scales and torn from the net's friction. The boys stitched closed the deeper cuts themselves. Infections were constant. Captains never lacked for amphetamines to help the crews work longer, but they rarely stocked antibiotics for infected wounds. This was a brutal place, one that I spent 5 weeks in the winter of 2014 trying to visit. Fishing boats on the South China Sea, especially in the Thai fleet, had for years been notorious for using so-called sea slaves, mostly migrants forced offshore by debt or duress. The worst among these ships were the long haulers, many of which fished hundreds of miles from shore, staying at sea sometimes for over a year as mother ships provided supplies and shuttled their catch back to shore. No captain had been willing to carry me and a photographer the full distance, more than 100 miles, out to these long-haul boats. So we instead hopscotched from boat to boat, 40 miles on one, 40 miles on the next, and so on, to get out far enough. In the end, the goal of this reporting trip, and this book more broadly, was to bear witness to a world rarely seen. It recounts a maritime repo man spiriting a tanker from a Greek port in international waters, and a doctor clandestinely shuttling pregnant women from Mexican shores to the high seas to administer otherwise illegal abortions. It chronicles the work of vigilante conservationists who, in the South Atlantic Ocean, chased Interpol's most wanted poacher ship, and then, in the Antarctic, hunted and harassed Japan's last factory whaling ship. In the South China Sea, I landed in the middle of an armed standoff between 2 countries, each of which had taken hostages from the other. Off the coast of Somalia, I found myself temporarily stranded on a small wooden fishing boat in pirate-infested waters. I saw a ship sink, rode out violent storms, and watched a near mutiny. Reporting these stories took me from a submarine in Antarctica and South Atlantic Oceans to offshore weapons depots in the Gulf of Oman and to oil platforms in the Arctic and Celebes Sea. For all the adventure, though, the most important thing I saw from ships all around the world, and I've tried in this book to capture, was an ocean woefully underprotected and the mayhem and misery often faced by those who work these waters.